But for those of y'all out there who don't know exactly how to use medium that well or struggle with it, I got a little secret. You don't need it. Hello, welcome to Paint Talk, the weekly show where I answer your questions on oil painting. So if you have a question about oil painting that you want answered, leave it in the comment section of this video or any of my videos, and I just might answer it on next week's Paint Talk. Now, before I jump into the questions, I'm going to let you know if you are looking for full in real-time painting video tutorials, I do have those, but those are on my Patreon page, which is listed in the description below. Also, new on my Patreon, when you sign up, you get access to a private Facebook group. So I got like 60 members in there right now. It's so cool. People are posting pictures of their paintings. People are commenting on them, giving them advice. I'll comment on there. I'll give advice. So if you're looking for like a supportive community of painters that are learning, just like you, this could be a good opportunity to jump in to that Facebook group. So check that out in the link below. Also, if you want to see what I'm painting on a daily basis, like the Nick Cage painting right here, you can follow me on Instagram at Forza43. All right, so let's jump into questions. The first one here is from I can never read these names. Is it Inyelian? It says, I got a starter kit from Michaels. It came with linseed oil. I did not know I needed paint thinner. Is the paint thinner needed, or can I just stick with what I have since I'm a beginner? Well, technically you don't need paint thinner to paint. You can paint with just linseed oil, but as a beginner, I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, it's a small thing. Get a thing of paint thinner for 12 bucks or whatever. You don't have to get a big one. But my fear is that if you don't get paint thinner as a beginner, you're going to fall into the trap of making your paint too thick too quickly. I get a lot of my students running into that they have trouble building the paint because they're starting out with it too thick, and a great way to thin it down is paint thinner. So if you don't have that, chances are you're going to make the paint a little too thick, and if you try and thin it out with the linseed oil, it's going to be really hard to build over top of that. The linseed oil is going to, if you put too much of it, it's going to make it very transparent, very slick, and just hard to, paint over. So, I always say, like, you don't need paint thinner, you don't need linseed oil. But if I was a beginner, if I was teaching like a beginner's class, I would definitely have them be using paint thinner. If like I had to choose one, paint thinner or linseed oil, I would choose paint thinner. You can use both if you want to know how to use both. I'll put a link above right now to a video I made on painting thin to thick that kind of shows you where I use paint thinner and how I build a medium and then just a straight paint. But for those of y'all out there who don't know exactly how to use medium that well or struggle with it, I got a little secret. You don't need it. If you don't know how you're using it and you're using it just to use it, don't use it. Just use paint thinner. I paint a lot of paintings with just paint thinner. I painted this one right here on the easel, the little landscape here. I'm gonna put shot box. I didn't use any medium in that. I was just using paint and paint thinner. So start with that and then build and progress to using medium, and that way you can kind of figure out how you like to work, and maybe you don't even want to use linseed oil, maybe you want to use some other different type of medium. So short answer to the question is yeah, pick up some paint thinner. I think it'll be worth your while. All right, my next question, Sammy Helena says, this video was super helpful. I understand the importance of shadows and highlights much more now. For the sketch, do you use paint or did you use some kind of pencil? Thanks. No, I do use paint most of the time, say about 90% of the time. When I draw in my subject, whether it's a landscape or a portrait, I will be using just thin paint. I'll just kind of mix, like, most of the time I stain my canvas with like a wash of burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. So I'll just use another, kind of like a darker version of that, and with a lot of paint thinner, and, just drawing my composition that way. There are other ways to do it. If you do want to use a pencil, I recommend using a charcoal pencil. With graphite, you run the risk of it kind of raising through your paint at the end of the painting. I have never had that happen, but I know that's a thing, and I've heard other artists talk about it. I personally have never had that happen, even though I have done paintings where I've drawn it in with pencil. So yeah, just pick up some charcoal. And if you're, the fact that you're asking about, drawing it in with a pencil, this may not be the case, but just in case it is, don't feel that you need to get a super detailed drawing. If that's why you're using a pencil and you want a pencil with a very fine point and do a very detailed drawing. And I always recommend that people, especially beginners, if anything, try not to have such a detailed drawing, because you can run into the trap of like coloring inside the lines. You kind of draw an outline of everything and then it's just coloring it in. I believe in blocking in and making like a blueprint of what you're going to do. Like I don't necessarily see it as a drawing as much as just kind of mapping out where stuff is. If I'm drawing a portrait, it's like, all right, the eyes are going to be on this line, the mouth's going to be on this line. If I'm doing a landscape, it's like, all right, this big shape I'm going to make right here is kind of oval shape, that's the tree, this and that. And you want to be accurate on where things are, and accurate in the development of your composition. But I'm by no means going to be drawing in individual tree branches, small tree branches in my painting, or putting like little details in my drawing, before I start painting it. So, so I mean, you can use charcoal, you can use thin paint, whatever you feel most comfortable with. It's kind of all I got on that one. All right, next question is Nani Stretch. It says, love and enjoy your YouTube info. Just wishing you could talk a little slower so I can write everything down. Or do you have a book I could order? Newbie to oils. Yeah, I've talked about a lot of books. I got all my books here. But if I were to choose one, I like this one the best. Oil Painting with Light and Color. This is a great book. I put a link to this in the description of all my videos, but I really like that book for beginners because it just breaks things down very simply. It goes over basic stuff like materials. It has great progress photos. Like I used that book a long time ago when I was first learning how to oil paint, and just the way it's Kevin McPherson. I don't get any money from him or anything. Like I'm not like promoting him for a specific reason. It's just the book I used. So it's just really helpful, and he paints in a very simple way, and I feel like the book does a great job of getting right to the point and what's important in terms of seeing dark and light shapes, breaking down. He does landscapes, breaking down landscapes. He does portraits, still lifes. And he just does a great job in the book of showing his process, which I feel like is a very accessible process to beginners. And also personally, I just really like his style. He has a simple style. It's like he doesn't get super detailed, which I like. And I find it difficult to learn, but even teach like that simple style, because teaching, because when you set out to paint something very realistic, say if you want to paint like a hyper realistic, painting, and like, what it's going to look like at the end, like you have a picture of whatever you're painting and I got to get it to look as much like that as possible. Like I find that a lot easier and simple to do because what the end product should look like. When you paint like him, where you have this simplistic style, or some people call it impressionistic style, you don't know exactly what it's going to look like. You don't have an example of what your painting should look like at the end, and you have to really be able to nail value very well, your drawing very well. You just have to be a lot better at a lot of different things, because if you're not relying on detail to translate what it is you're painting, the painting's not going to turn out that well, and people aren't going to know what it is. Just because you paint loose, doesn't mean that it's a good painting. Like, you have to paint loose, but you have to have a bunch of other set of skills and other things working in your painting to pull off that looseness. So, like, if that's kind of a direction that you want to paint, even if it's not, like, even if you do want to paint very realistic, that book's still very helpful because it just goes over just straight basic truths about oil painting. So if you're gonna pick up a book, pick up that one. Okay, next one is from Blue-Eyed Matt 42. This is a great video, thank you. I was wondering this myself, starting out and all, working with acrylics a lot. I kind of figured out the paint thinner versus straight paint. Do you recommend I get linseed oil to start with and feel it out? This is like the opposite of our first question. I get questions all over the place. I get people asking about the same thing, but in opposite different ways. So he's pretty much saying, like, do I need to get linseed oil? Again, you don't need to get linseed oil. If you're looking for a medium, linseed oil is the number one medium I recommend for beginners. I feel like it's a great baseline, to start out and give you a good representation of what, like, working with oils with medium is like. Don't make it too complicated. If you don't understand why you're using medium, don't use it. If you want a video on medium, I'll put a link above to a video I've made on using medium and linseed oil. But the last thing I want you to do is think that you need to use it just because, like, that's what you do. It's not. Just use your paint thinner if that's what you want to do. But linseed oil it's a slow drying medium, so your paint's going to dry even slower. And again, a lot of people starting out find that very scary. They want fast drying mediums. They want things that are going to make their paint act like paint that they're familiar with, which is acrylics and watercolors. So they'll get stuff like Liquid Original, which speeds it up, which is fine. I'll use that stuff sometimes. It's just, if you're starting out, you really want to lean into what makes oils different, and that slow drying time, is going to help you. And if you're using just straight paint, if you're using just paint thinner, you're not going to be using any medium. Just know that that's going to dry your paint quicker. So, adjust for that and just realize that, opposed to using linseed oil, which will slow it down. But yeah, definitely go pick up some linseed oil, give it a try. If you don't like it, don't use it. And if you don't know why you're using it, or if you just don't understand it, don't use it for now. You'll be fine. All right, one more question, and then I gotta go paint some stuff. Michael Tolan, it says how to, I'm guessing it means, how do professionals have consistent sheen over their entire canvas? That is probably because they varnish it. So at the end of the painting, once it's dry, you can put a varnish on it, and that will make it an even gloss or an even matte finish over, whatever it is you're painting. So with varnishing, thing to know about for anybody that goes out there and starts varnishing their paintings, I've talked about this a few times, is that just because your painting is dry to the touch does not mean that it's ready for varnishing. You can use retouch varnish. Retouch varnish is different than just regular varnishes. Regular varnish, you should wait sometimes up to a year, depending on how thick the paint is, because just because the paint's dry to the touch doesn't mean it's fully dry. It's still drying on the inside and expanding. If you put a varnish over top of that, you can run the risk of cracking. But with the retouch varnish, it's flexible enough that a lot of artists use it when they have to, like you said, get that even look with the shine of their painting, because they got to submit it to a show or they got to get it to a client, and they don't want to wait 6 months to a year to do that. So if you do pick up a retouch varnish, make sure you get the retouch varnish, make sure it's completely dry, and then you can varnish it that way. A thing to know with varnishing is try to do it outside. There's a lot of fumes dealing with it. So if you do it inside, it's going, make sure you got a mask or good ventilation or something. I just like to play it safe and do it outside. If you get some varnish on your hands, fun little trick is that if you use olive oil, that will get it off. You'll notice if you get it on your hands and you try and wash it off with just soap and water, your hands are going to still feel sticky. Get some olive oil in there. Somehow that works to break it up and get it off. So, also I don't recommend using the spray can varnishes. It seems like it would be easy and simple to do, but I've never done it without getting streaks in my painting. It's just hard to get an even, so don't do that. Just get, the regular bottle of varnish. Make sure you got a good brush, don't use a cheap brush when you're varnishing it, because if the bristles of the brush come out, they're going to get stuck in the varnish. You got to pick them out, and it's a big pain. So use a good sturdy, good quality brush. The bristles aren't going to come out. Sometimes I'll even use one of those foam brushes. I'll use one of those just so I don't get hairs in there, and also make sure you don't get dust or pet hair, dirt, or anything floating around, because if it sets in it, stuff dries pretty quickly. It's going to get stuck in there, and you don't want that. All right, so that's this week's paint talk. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have questions, leave it in the comments section. I'm here to help answer your questions. If you want to share your work with me, share it with other people that are doing the same thing that you're doing and learning how to oil paint. You should really sign up for the Patreon. The Patreon tier. I got a $5 tier if you want two tutorials a month. If you want a tutorial every week, $9 a month. People spend that at Starbucks every day. So that, join that, be a part of our community. It's really fun. I also poll people in there, ask them what kind of tutorials they want to see me paint. And that's how I dictate what tutorials I make, and what tutorials I make influence what, videos I put out here on YouTube. So check that out in the description below. If you want to see what I'm painting on a daily basis, you can follow me on Instagram at Forza43. I am Chris Fornatero, here telling you to go get painting.